The champion quickly goes through. Let's go as well.
Welcome back to the Honest Athletes Season 4, Episode 1. Today's guest is truly swimming royalty. If you don't take that from me, take it from her Instagram bio, which actually says 3 times Olympian, multiple European medalist, 2-time Commonwealth champion, world medalist, world and European short course champion, and 22 times British champion. Now, these achievements aside, I said it in my interview on the call room, but I will say it every time this name comes up. This swimmer is one of the kindest superstars you could ever meet, and is someone who brings so much more than just success in the pool, which is why I'm very, very, very proud to announce that Hannah Miley is joining us today. So Hannah, welcome to the Honest Athletes podcast.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
How are you doing? First of all, how are you doing? Because we've just had Christmas and New Year.
Yep.
How was that for you?
I'm feeling very full still.
Did you end Christmas Day feeling disgusted in yourself?
Yes.
You did it right.
I had to roll from one side of the sofa to the other. Not get up and move, but roll.
I don't think I've ever felt prouder of you. And you've gone to 3 Olympics. So there we go.
I'm glad. Life made.
A New Year, all good? All the family good?
Yeah, it was good. It was nice and quiet. You and I recently bought a house, so we kind of thought it would be a nice chance to enjoy being in our sort of new place and kind of set our own kind of Christmas and sort of festive traditions and have sort of family and friends over as well. So yeah, relatively quiet compared to what I think the normal chaos sometimes the festive time brings. So it was all good.
Yeah, was there any arguments over the food? Who did the food?
Ewan did actually. He's quite house proud when it comes to being in the kitchen. He's very good. So for him, he really wanted to like master the roast potatoes, get them nice and crispy. They kind of went a little bit mushy.
Oh
so
no,
I think we need a little bit more practice. But everything else was fab. As I say, we ate far too much. And then ate some more on top of that. It was great. And then obviously having Poppy was great. She managed to drag us off the sofa to have at least a bit of a walk. So I kind of felt slightly better in myself. But then you come back and then you just finish off what you'd left. So,
of course you do. It's like, I can't eat the thing. And then somehow you just manage to keep going, which is great. And this would have been your first Christmas, New Year as a retired swimmer. How did you find that? Was it like a bit more relaxing? Could you just chill out a little bit more?
Yeah, it was actually. It was quite nice. First time being, a swammer. Coming into Boxing Day, it was like waking up thinking, right, are we doing, because normally sometimes we go to the beach and we do like sand dune runs and it's like, right, what pools are open? No, I don't need to do anything. So, it was actually it was really nice. And by the time like you go from Boxing Day to New Year, you suddenly think, what day is it? Because you never remember where you are at. And it just went past so quick, but it was just really nice to just have it quite relaxed and have time to spend with family and friends. I did kind of miss some of the activity, and I guess that was a little bit of self-guilt from the amount of food that I ate. But it was a lot more relaxed, which was nice.
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad to hear that you've had a nice chill over Christmas and New Year because, like you say, as a swimmer or as an athlete, it's always in the back of your mind, like, when am I training next and what do I need to do and all those kinds of things. So nice to hear that you chilled out. As I said in the intro, you are swimming royalty, not just British swimming royalty, swimming royalty in general. And everybody knows that within swimming. You have literally done so much. And that's why I've been so excited to have you on. It's because it's like, where do we go with this conversation? But I think for the listeners, for those that maybe necessarily don't know too much about swimming and stuff like that, just if you could give a little bit of a background on how you started, why you started, and all those kinds of things, really.
Well, it kind of goes right back to when I was like a wee toddler. So it was my dad that taught me to swim, first chucked me in a pool when I was very, very little. And it was that fascination of babies and the relationship they have with water. Like, they pretty much think they're still inside the womb. They're quite happy to swim around in the water. And I think my dad was quite fascinated with that. He always said that he wanted myself and my two younger brothers to always be safe around water, considering how much water is around us. Great Britain's an island. And, you know, you're on holidays, you've got water parks, you've got lakes, you've got seas, rivers. Like, we are surrounded by so much water. So it is important to just have that life skill, because once you learn how to swim, it stays with you for life, a bit like riding a bike. And when I was young, so my dad taught me to swim when I was like 3. I think it was backstroke. Apparently it took 20 minutes to get me swimming backwards for like, you know, a couple of strokes. So it kind of went from there, and joined my first swimming club, Geary, up in the northeast of Scotland, when I was about maybe like 5 or 6. And I remained part of that club until I was 26. So very much a diehard Geary
I love
fan.
it. I love it.
And it was just an amateur swimming club. You know, we trained in a 4-lane, 25-meter pool, high walls. So it wasn't like your, you know, anti-turbulent lane ropes. The afternoon swimming sessions, I wasn't allowed to have flags in, because I think it was like a health and safety thing. So I had to find marks on the roof of the ceiling to try and use that as my 5-meter turning point. So I had to count my strokes. So yeah, so it definitely, I just kind of fell in love with the sport the more and more I got into it. And my dad was heavily involved in swimming actually before I came along. He used to swim himself. He developed a device called an aquapacer. If any athletes have heard of the tempo trainer, it's a very similar device to what he created. So you have him to thank if you love or hate the tempo trainer. And I think it's something like 1 in 3 Olympic gold medalists at the Sydney Olympics used his aquapacer. So he knows a lot about swimming. And so it meant, I guess, our relationship, being able to argue with him about swimming was just a non-starter. So I trusted a lot in what he said, because I knew he knew what he was talking about. And I just fell in love with the water. I felt more coordinated in water. I've got very floppy feet. So when I run, it's a bit like a penguin. Like, they flap on the floor and my knees turn in the way. But I just enjoyed the outlet of it. And I enjoy sometimes being in my own head too. And water kind of gave me that. And it allowed me to be different. I did thrive off being a very different child. I loved being slightly, you know, left wing. When everyone else would turn right, I would be the awkward one and kind of go left. And it just started from there. I was very, very competitive. 2 younger brothers as well, fiercely protective over them, but also sibling rivalry kind of helps. And they also got into swimming too. And actually, just before I retired, my middle brother Alistair, he is the fastest Miley at the 400 medley. So it's like, really could have gotten it. But you know, even then, it's still nice to kind of keep it within the family. And it's just kind of grown from there. And each time I race, I know that I stood on the block, not just for myself, but for my family. So for me, my family was a huge contributor to my career. And I just love, you know, taking time off school to go on training camps, to travel abroad, to race. And I found that I was pretty good at it. I was a lot better at swimming than I was at running. So it just kind of stuck with it. And same with, you know, going on the journey with my dad. Again, there's not that many sort of parent-athlete duos. So it kind of fitted that dynamic of me being that little bit different to everybody else. So it just kind of went from there. Apologies, that was a very long-winded explanation, but it's allowed me to travel the world, take my family on quite a few adventures, and meet some incredible people.
Hannah, there is absolutely no need to apologise. This is why you're here. It's to talk about your story and everything you've been through. And, you know, thank you for opening up and really explaining these things, because like I say, you know, you were in swimming for so long in terms of the athlete, and you really experienced it all, you know, the injuries, the training on your own, the training with teams, going away with your home coach, your dad, but also going away without him, travel, balancing life, school, all of it. You have like a massive sort of look out on all of it, and it's really interesting to hear, and that's why we're here. So So you got into it because of those reasons, and you've obviously mentioned your dad, who was a massive part of your journey, which is something that I'm definitely want to touch on later, because it's just amazing how that worked. And I got to experience some teams with you and some camps and stuff, which was, again, I had my own stories with your dad. So, just everybody knows, again, a legend in the sport. But so you carried on swimming, obviously. You started like I did to keep safe. We are surrounded by water, so it's probably a good idea. And then obviously loved it, fell in love with it, had siblings that did it. What was your junior career? What did that look like? Was it success after success, or was it a tough part of your journey?
That's actually a very good question. I was very, very feisty, so my competitive spirit was very much there. So whether I got on the podium or didn't get on the podium, I still kind of came back for more, because I just love racing. We kind of had a mentality of if I got a qualifying time for that event, I would swim it. And then as I got older, I started getting more qualifying times for lots of different events. So we worked out what my weaker strokes were, try and work on them, try and get qualifying times to then be able to race them at competitions. And I think I remember turning up to a district event up in Inverness and realised I qualified for everything. And we're like, we'll just swim everything. So literally swam every race and as many finals as I managed to do within the 2 days. And I was knackered by the end of it. But nobody else had done it. So again, it just kind of hit that little value of just being that little bit different. So yeah, as I say, things would go well and then sometimes things wouldn't. But I just always had that drive to just get up and just race again, regardless of what my previous outcome was. I tried to see if I could get onto like the European Youth Olympic team, because I felt I was, wanting to maybe try and target something as big as that. But I missed out. I wasn't quick enough to get those qualifying times. And then I think when I was 14, I had like 2 years before they changed the rules. It was 2 years to try and get your European junior cut. And I remember trying to see if I could get a hold of that. I was on the world class potential team from British Swimming. So I thought, right, I've got the potential to, maybe step up and prove myself as a junior. And again, I missed that. So it wasn't until it was my very final, last chance at trying to make the European Juniors at 15, just before I turned 16, was when I first qualified for that and actually got on the team. So I would kind of say my junior sort of ride was lots of peaks and troughs. There was lots of successes in that, because I swam everything. I had lots of opportunities to maybe get on a podium. But it was really good experience, because I would also get chances where I wouldn't be on the podium, and it would get me thinking, because I wouldn't sit and worry about that one swim, because 9 times out of 10 I had to be back up on the block to race again, so I'd always have to park it and move on to the next swim. And I kind of found I was learning a lot about myself as well, having all those multiple swims. The one stroke I always struggled with was breaststroke, and that was probably the one event that sometimes I maybe not get a qualifying time for that competition. But everything else kind of worked out well, whether it was sprints as well. I was never really much of a sprinter. I'd try, and I would always wanted to be a sprinter, but sadly not. But that was when I figured out that the events like the 200 fly, the 400 IM, distance free, it was a lot easier to get into those events compared to the sprint events. So the opportunities to make finals, come back for second swims, always fell in those kind of events. So I kind of started naturally moving towards those events, because again, I was like, well, I want to make finals, so I might as well go to these events because they're just so a bigger opportunity. So yeah, the junior career was good. It definitely came with lots of success, but I kind of learned a lot along the way. It wasn't always, progressive. I was quite small, quite weedy and quite scrawny. So even though I grew a little bit in height, I think what I lacked in height and stature, I kind of made up in sort of my mindset, my sheer determination and stubbornness as well.
Yeah, you definitely have to have that in the sport of swimming. And you've talked a lot there about doing so many events and stuff like that. And that is definitely something you carried through your whole career. I mean, I think I told you this story when we were on the phone the other day, but I did another podcast called Believe and Achieve. And they asked me how many 100 backstroke I'd swam. And I asked them, who is it? And it's a silly question now, I think back. Who's had the most? And they were like, oh, Hannah Miley's 400 IMs was like 7,554. And I was like, oh, of course. It's like you race so much. You did all the events, though. They said, it wasn't just the 400 IM. There were so many events that you just were head and shoulders above everyone. And I think that's great, because when I look back and I was younger, I would do the same. I'd race as many races as I could, and I loved that, because for me, I didn't get as nervous because I didn't have time to think about it. So it was like in out. You're learning, you get yourself, your body used to racing a lot. But talking about specialising, even though I've said you did carry that on through your career, obviously you specialised 400 IM, 305, those kinds of things. How was that process, and what's it like in terms of what you enjoy and what you're good at, and how did you marry the two, or didn't you?
I mean, you kind of have a love-hate relationship, I think, with your best events, and with the 400 IM it's exactly the same. There's always that debate of what event is the worst event, and it always ends up being like 200 fly or 400 IM. I do think 200 backstroke should kind of go high public value.
Do you know what, Hannah? Sorry, I'm going to interrupt here. Just before you carry on, I can't tell you how many people I have told in the swimming world. They say, what's the hardest 200? And I say, well, it's 200 back, obviously. I've got to put mine forward. And they go, well, how do you know that? Like, what makes you think that you're right? And I go, Hannah Miley once said to me that it is one of the hardest events. So that's all you need to know. And I swear to God, everybody just bows down then, Hannah. They go, they just go, okay, well, Hannah Miley said it. That's fine then. It's like this unspoken thing of, if Hannah says it, it's the rule. So thank you for that. I've won so many arguments because of you. But there you go. Please continue. Sorry, I had to interrupt there.
No, it's all good. I actually kind of remember you telling me that, actually. Oh, man. The 400, as I say, breaststroke was just my nemesis. I think there was an interview before the Commonwealth Games, my very first Commonwealth Games in 2006. And I think they said, what's your race strategy? And for me, I was like, I have to go out as hard as I can because everybody catches me up on the breaststroke. And it was always really, really frustrating. But again, it was an event that not many people wanted to swim or seemed to be up for swimming. So I just took the opportunity to try and get in it. I wasn't perfect at it. As I said, breaststroke was my weakest stroke. But I made it work. And for me, I guess my fly was probably my strongest at that time. So I was able to kind of get that balance of getting away with having, a solid front half and then making up for my weak breaststroke by finishing quite solidly on the freestyle, because I guess the amount of racing that I'd done and just the type of training I was doing, my endurance was actually pretty strong. So my freestyle would always make up for my poor breaststroke skills. So it just kind of evolved that trying to make the European junior time, it was easier for me to make the 400 IM time than it was for the 200 fly. So I guess just through natural selection of what qualifying times were out there, it just guided me in that direction. I was finding that I was closer to the times in the 400 than I was in sort of any of the other events. I'd always try and see if we could get other events out with the 400, but I just always felt an affinity because I think the 400 IM fits that sort of value that I have of just be that little bit different, because every athlete swims it is different. I feel that, backstrokers can have like long legs or long arms or are quite tall. Fly swimmers maybe have a longer body, shorter legs, or there's always kind of like a typical shape, I think, or style that most athletes fall into. With the 400 IM, it just depends on your strength. So you can have so many different sizes and shapes of athletes kind of going into the 400 that you would never really know whether they were a good 400 or not, 400 IMer until they swam it. And I just love that sort of strategy of just that chess playing. You know, someone might have a really strong fly, or a bit like me, have a really bad breaststroke, and then the other person might find, right, I need to, you know, how do I strategize against that to try and beat at their own game? So, you know, I enjoyed the fact that you could change up the strokes. It also meant in training, it wasn't boring because I could change other strokes up. So I'd be like, right, do number one today. And I'm like, what's feeling like my number one stroke today? Is it fly? Or arms are a bit tired. I could possibly go for freestyle. Or maybe I should do backstroke. It was never breaststroke. So it was whenever they were like, oh, work your number 4 stroke. It was like, oh, can't. Right, okay, I'm going to have to work.
I don't have a choice then.
Yeah, but I guess it was just the fact of doing a lot of the sort of back-to-back racing and just trying different things that, you know, as my body grew, my arms got longer, you kind of go a bit out of proportion, and then you become a bit more settled with your shape and size. And even then, from like 15, 16 to about 18, it still changes again. And I think for me, the 400 medley just suited my shape and size and my sort of like body weight to power output, because I wasn't a strong athlete. I could not hold on to any muscle. I was just quite scrawny, but my efficiency and my ability to keep going, I think, just suited that event quite well.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's everyone, like you say, everyone has their own strengths, and then particularly an event like 400 medley, it's like, okay, what are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? How do I make them less of a weakness? And, you know, there is so much strategy to it, and it's what makes the 4x1 medley teams and stuff like that so exciting. Medley is a very exciting event because there's nothing worse than doing a 200 IM for me, because 400 IM, no thank you. But there is nothing worse than doing a 200 IM and knowing there's a breaststroker coming for me, and there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing. I can speed up my stroke rate, I can slow it down, I can glide. You will go the same speed, Lauren. So it's just exciting, and it does bring that element in. And so you made European Juniors, which at the young age, European Juniors is everything. It's like, if you don't make European Juniors, you may as well quit. That is how serious it is. It's like, and then on poolside, it's like, oh, they went to Juniors last year. Oh, they've qualified. They got a medal there. It's literally everything. And then when you've done it and you kind of try and step up to the senior stage, you're like, wow, it wasn't actually everything. This is not, you know, most people that actually made my team weren't swimming then for like the next year or 2 years. They'd quit. So it's funny, that kind of transition after juniors, I always find. How did you find that sort of transitioning into the senior stage then? Yeah,
so I guess because it was my last year, I was just about to turn 16. I was lucky enough with, I guess, being Scottish, we got to be part of Team Scotland for the Commonwealth Games the year after. That kind of opened my eyes a little bit to the world of senior swimming. And I was lucky enough to have qualified for the European Championships off the back of that. And I was actually very poorly before the Commonwealth Games in 2006. So the fact that I even was able to qualify and go was kind of a miracle in itself.
Where was the 2006? Where was that?
Was in Melbourne.
Melbourne, right, okay.
Yep. Right. So at the age of 16, going into my hires, or I think the equivalent of A-levels, and I got to miss like 3 weeks of school. It was amazing.
That is
amazing. But it was a big eye-opener, and it was a big jump to kind of go into that senior level. You know, I was I was up with, you know, some pretty sort of quite high Scottish legends in my eyes. You know, you got David Carey, Gregor Tate, Chris Gilchrist, Ewan Dale. Like, these guys were just kind of, you know, the stars and being on the podium as well. And it was just so inspiring to see them, hear the national anthem being played so often. It really inspired me to, you know, do whatever it took to take my swimming as far as it could go. And I never expected it to go as far as it did, but it was literally the Commonwealth Games that kind of took me into that sort of senior level, I guess. Because then I went to the European Championships off the back of that. And I guess you could say I failed spectacularly at that. So to qualify for the Europeans, I had to qualify at the Commonwealth Games. And once I got the time, to get onto the world championship. So that was like the next level up. And I was like, right, okay, all the, Katinka Hosu, who I'd raced against at the European Juniors, she qualified for the world. So I was like, right, okay, well, if these girls who I'm racing against are qualifying, I kind of need to do the same. So it was back in Budapest. European Juniors was in Budapest as well. So I thought, right, let's do this. I've got a set qualifying time, swam the heat, made the final. I was in an outside lane, and I thought, right, always go faster in the final anyway. So I've got this in the bag. First time, I think I got a little bit cocky and went slower in the final. And it was like a big kick in the teeth, and actually probably one of my best learning curves, because I realized I did not want that to happen to me ever again. So I missed out from qualifying at Worlds. And funnily enough, we had a competition at the same time as Worlds, and that time I would have actually won a medal, which then would have pre-selected me for the Olympics. And I think I ended up working out, it's like 5 or 6 like competitions or international competitions I missed out on from that one swim in 2006.
Really?
So I kind of had a gap, I guess, from actually racing or trying to get onto the senior level, because I couldn't, because I got myself out of that loop. So from 2006 until the Olympic trials in 2008, was kind of just training and racing nationally, really, and not being on the GB team. So that was kind of, I guess, my sort of junior to senior transition. And then the experience of getting onto the Olympic team. So for me, I was very, very focused and very determined to make sure that what happened in 2006 at Europeans wasn't going to bite me in the butt again. And then we obviously had the controversy with the suits. I'd always raced in a costume, hated racing in a knee suit. But then racing in the full body suits, I kind of realized that it was changing and actually helping my breaststroke. And it was pretty much after 2008 that my breaststroke started coming back, and actually probably to this day ended up being one of my stronger strokes within the 400 medleys. So I kind of firmly believe everything happens for a reason. And, I could have quite easily given up and just thought, oh, well, I'm obviously not good enough. After that terrible performance in Budapest, I felt really embarrassed. I thought, oh, I've come last, I've gone slower. But I think a lot of junior swimmers realize that those are the moments that step you up into the senior swimming, because it's not necessarily the physical performance, it's the mindset. So physically you can keep performing, but it's that mindset maturity from the junior to the senior that I think is so important. And for me, I had my arse handed to me at that meet, and I very much had to quickly learn that, you know what, it's not the end of the world. I did swim poorly, but there's a reason for it. And, it took me 2 years to realize that reason meant just get back on that horse, right? Work at it again. Okay, you've not gotten what you've wanted. You're going to have to find another way to get to that point. So, how are you going to change it? What are you going to do to make sure that doesn't happen again? So instead of seeing it as a failure, I just saw it as a lesson and used it to better myself the next time round. So
I am 100% with you in terms of everything happens for a reason. I absolutely believe that. So I'm definitely in that sort of mindset now. When I was swimming, maybe not necessarily as strong as you seem to be talking right now, but I definitely believe that. And I think that's one thing that I definitely agree with in terms of stepping up to senior swimming. You need to have that mindset. And it's something that is really, it's great hindsight. But when you're in it and, you have these moments, they seem like the worst thing in the world. You said you felt embarrassed and stuff like that. And now you look back and you think, gosh, little did I know. It was actually okay. And like you say, it worked out for the better. And so it's having that sort of thought process and stuff like that. And with the mentoring that I do now, I see it so often it can be a break point for so many people. It sounds like at that time, was that just your mindset just from the off, or was it due to the people around you that made you realize that, no, okay, go again. It's fine. You're not dead, still alive. We can do this. It's really interesting that for me to know if that is just you or if it's something just around you.
I think that this is where my dad, I think, comes in. I think I'm very lucky to have had somebody like him, I guess, mentor and guide me through my career. And, neither of us kind of going through it knew what we were doing. We kind of figured it out and learned along the way. And our relationship now is so much different to what it was when I was 15, 16. But certainly that ability to, face what I didn't want to face, which was actually look back at that swim, work out what didn't go right, what you could have done better. But instead of beating yourself up over it, it was like, well, how can you harness that to then step it out in a way to, feel like you then have a purpose to move forward with it. So it's like, right, okay, well, one of the things we noted is when I went out, I wasn't prepared enough because it was an outdoor arena. I had shorts and t-shirt on in the evening and I was cold. So I was just not physically prepared for this. So it was like, well, you've made an error there. You're going to have to make sure that you wear warm clothing. So when it comes to competitions, I, to the point where my face is bright red when I come out from the pool. And that's before, I even race. And that's purely from that moment because I was like, I'm not going to be cold before I race ever again. So I'd always pack tracksuits. I always amazed at when you see swimmers that come out in just shorts. And each to their own is what they feel comfortable with. But for me, I was like, I'm going to wear tracksuit top, trousers, socks, shoes, everything to make sure that I am fully warm. And then the next part was my tempo wasn't right in the first half of the race. And again, you don't like looking back and saying like, well, what did I do wrong? But it was important for me to actually do that. And it was because of my dad sitting me down and getting me to watch it, because I could have quite easily just gone, no, I don't really want to face that again. I just don't want to deal with it. But having to deal with it and look at it in a sense of being like, okay, I've done quite a lot of things wrong, or there's things that I can improve on, I can kind of walk away being like, right, okay, well, I know the next time that I compete, I'm going to get myself as warm as I possibly can. Do I need to change my warm-up strategy? What can I do? So I kind of went away being like, well, the next competition I'm going to go to, it wasn't, well, that's it, I'm never going to swim again. It was, I kind of had that mindset of keeping myself moving forward. And I think that was partly down to maybe my own mindset, that sort of stubbornness and determination of wanting to get back on the block again. But having the guidance from my dad to manage that mindset and that outlook as well, so that I wasn't solely beating myself up of, silly Hannah, you've gone so slow, you're rubbish, you're useless, and actually being quite harsh on myself in that sort of sense. It's like, yep, you didn't do well, but you know what? It's not the end of the world. Let's move on and make sure the next one's not going to be as bad, or let's make sure what we're going to do to make the next one better. How are we going to plan it? So then you can move on the next couple of months or the next couple of years of feeling like you're moving more towards the positive side rather than sitting and worrying about what you view as something negative, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And if there's any younger swimmers, younger athletes listening right now, please listen, rewind, listen to it again, because it's so important. And this is from one of the best. So, it's just great for us to be able to hear these things. Now, you've mentioned your dad a lot, obviously, in the last couple of minutes. And he is someone that, like I reiterate, is an absolute legend within the sport of swimming and in life in general. So I would love for you to kind of just explain what that was like, having your dad as your coach, where the line is drawn. Is it we cross the front door and now you're my dad again? How do you navigate that? Because I don't think there's many people that could do that. And, it's very impressive. And it obviously worked just before you do go on. I'll never forget at the Glasgow Commonwealth Games when you won and you saw your dad and, get emotional. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, it's just this really special thing to have gone through. And so please just talk.
Yeah, I can very much do that. So the funny thing is we had no idea how to set this relationship up. My dad's background, you should get him on because some of his stories are incredible and you'll understand. I think if you understand fully what he's been through, it kind of makes sense. he's been through the army, so he's done a lot of military training, ended up flying helicopters for the army, and then ended up flying helicopters for an oil company, and that's how he ended up in Aberdeen. And he was hugely passionate about swimming all the time, and he got this book. I think it was like a petrol station book where you could collect the stickers to put in it from filling up your car with petrol. But his mum and dad didn't have a car, so he just had this book. I think it was the 1972 Olympics, and had all the events, and you could have first, second, and third were left blank. And as the Olympics went on in 1972, my dad would sit and actually write in who got gold, silver, and bronze and the times that they did. And he kept this book. Never filled in any of the stickers, but he filled in purely the swimming side because he just was hugely passionate about swimming. And around about the time of the European Juniors, he gave me this book to have a look at it. And we kind of looked back at what some of my personal best times were. And then we worked out that, I could have won like 6 Olympic gold medals with the times that I was doing at the age of 15, 16.
Amazing.
So he just had a great way of looking at things in a different perspective. And that, in a sense, that sharing that little bit of passion of his with me, kind of took me along with it. And I always admired when he would, travel and work with, he worked with Ian Thorpe for a little bit with the Aquapacer. He went to America and Stanford University with the women's team again with the Aquapacer. He got to meet so many Olympians and all those who've been on the podium. Paul Palmer, an Olympic silver medalist for Great Britain, 400 freestyle, quoted to saying, he thanks Patrick with the work in the Aquapacer to him being on the podium. So I knew from a young age, if I wanted to be sassy about swimming, you don't know swimming, I do. That was a big lie. I was only kidding myself. So I knew he knew what he was talking about. But in that sense of coach, athlete, father, daughter, and where the line was drawn, it wasn't that clear. There were times where the line did get blurred. And I think he probably was maybe stricter with me compared to some of the other swimmers because, I was his daughter. He knew where, how much to push me and knew what to expect of me. And I guess as well as a teenager, just to make sure that I toed the line and I didn't embarrass him. But I always hugely admired what he did. And I think what helped was, even though he was flying helicopters, he wasn't always there as the coach. He would script the sessions if he was having to fly early in the mornings. So I would write the session out that he'd left, take it to the pool, and then give it to the volunteer coach who was covering, and they would run the session. And then afterwards, I would, with my little Nokia 3210 mobile, text him and tell him just basically feedback. Yeah, great session. Or, felt pants. And it allowed me to be honest and actually give him feedback, and I felt he would listen to that. So that responsibility of him putting trust in me that, okay, he's not there, he's not always breathing down my throat, but he had to trust that I would get on with the sessions. And same with the afternoon session. I'd finish school and go to the pool, and the way that our timing, we didn't get as much access to the pool as we'd like. So sometimes I would have to go into a public session and just swim on my own. And he wasn't there either. So I'd have to self-time, take the session that he would leave me in the morning to know this is what you do after school. And again, I'd have to get on with it. And I could have very easily just sat in the cubicle and be like, yeah, I did my training session as my nose grows longer from lying. But from a very young age, I'm a terrible liar. And also, I'm quite a literal person. I'll kind of take you back to when I was maybe like 3 or 4 years old. We had this fluffy cat called Bruce, and he loved to, cats just have this knack of dipping their tail across coffee tables with like food and stuff. And he just has this knack of just, it was very fluffy, just leaving lots of fluff all over people's drinks. And we had people over. And my mum and dad were getting very frustrated trying to move the cat, and he kept going back, dipping his tail in people's tea and biscuits and all that.
Gosh.
And my dad was just like, Hannah, can you just go kick the cat out? So I go to pick up Bruce, and he's a farm cat, so he's quite big, he's quite chunky, and I'm kind of like waddling over to the back door, put him down, open the back door. My right leg goes back and then makes contact with Bruce as Bruce then gets booted out the back door.
Poor Bruce.
I know. And I got into so much trouble and I couldn't understand it. And it was like, but you told me to kick the cat, through my tears, just basically saying, but you told me to kick the cat. And I think my dad realized then that I do take things literally. So if he says, well, you need to do this session, I will do it. Purely because, not that I feel pressured to do it, but because in my head, well, I've been told to do that, I'll just do it. Mm-hmm. It made sense to me. And also I kind of over time, he always looked at other swimmers, the analysis, and I always find it fascinating watching swimming. He would have his stopwatches out, he would make notes, he would look at things. He just had a really different way of looking at swimmers, like high performance level. And then when we got on poolside to train, like he wasn't always a strict coach. There was times where he'd have fun. You get one really tough training session, and then the next session he would come in and be like, right, let's do some relays, or let's do this. And he had a really good way of balancing the hard work with the fun. So you knew that if you did the hard work, you could be rewarded with the fun sessions. And same with if you did fun, you made sure you didn't take it too far and took the mick, because you could quite easily make it very, very hard again. So, I think he learned a lot as well with flying, his sort of behavioral management, having to fly helicopters. It is a life or death situation. If he doesn't get along with the co-pilot, there's a lot of lives on board that could be at risk. So he's taken a lot of his sort of life experiences, I think, and helped develop it into elite sport, because there is a lot of crossover with behaviors and how you manage it. And yeah, there was times where it wasn't always smooth sailing. Like we do have, our spats, and like any relationship, you are going to have your ups and your downs. But I think it is important to have that, because as a young person come through, I need to develop and figure out who I am as an individual, test the world, test my parents, see, where I fit in, and also find my voice with things. And for me, I always found my voice with my swimming. And I always just wanted to do my family proud. And for me, taking my swimming along and taking them on that journey was my way of being able to give back. And yeah, it's definitely a question that I've always been asked, is what's it like being coached by your dad? But to be fair, I've not really had it any other way. And I was a firm believer of, if it's not broke, why try and fix it? And I've had a great opportunity, because he would fly. Sometimes he would send me to different coaches that he knew friends-wise to do camps. I would pick up bits that I would learn there, bring it back, and then we'd sit and have a little discussion on what, I learned, what I thought went well, what could I do to be better in training. And he just gave me a lot of opportunity to better myself and just have an experience. Yeah, there were times as a teenager you want to rebel, and it's like, no, you can't tell me what to do, sort of thing. But I hugely admired what he did, and I think that trust came down to it. I think the fact that he put trust in me and I trusted him, and the fact that we both trusted each other, I think allowed our relationship and balance to kind of be a lot more smooth sailing than maybe some other parent-child relationships through sport. I don't know. It is one of those ones that it worked the way that it did. It could have gone any other way, I guess. But no, I think it's definitely all, again, that hindsight, looking back at it, it's possibly, you look at it with 2020 vision, you kind of see it and understand it a little bit more. But at the time, we were kind of just figuring it out as we went along. I think as well, keeping family values was key. And I think that definitely helped our relationship, being on the same page with our values. He had some values that were different to mine, but it's being respectful of that. And then vice versa as well, I think was really key.
I think some common words that pop into mind when you talk about your dad and everything you've just said, you've got trust, honesty, respect, communication. I think the reason that it worked so well as well, like you say, you had your family values and you made sure you always stuck to them. There's always going to be times in every single relationship in life where it doesn't work out right, or you need to figure something out, or it's just a sticking point. But there was always those values, and that I always saw that when I was on the team, when you were together. And you also were both open-minded. You grew together, you understood each other more. And it's also, I've said it already, but communication, you know, as swimmers, just in general, whether it's your dad or not, a lot of the time, I think athletes, especially in swimming, we are babied a little bit, but also sometimes expect the coach to read your mind. And it's like, how dare you not know that my right knee hurts? And he's like, well, you haven't told me. And they're like, oh yeah. So it's, you know, it's quite funny. It's trying to navigate that. But I say in swimming that you are babied, and you are, but you are probably one of the athletes who wasn't. And I use you a lot in my mentoring when athletes ask me certain questions about that and being reliant on a coach, or I don't have an amazing 50-meter pool with a coach on poolside all the time. I go, well, funny story. You know Hannah Miley? And they're like, yeah. Oh my God, yes. And I go, well, and then I just tell them just a tiny part of what you used to do. And they just, it's like, I don't really need to do anything. They're just like, oh my gosh, yeah, okay, right. I don't need to talk to you anymore. I'm done, you know. But it's like, it's just, again, I've said it before, but your story and your journey and everything, there's so much everybody can take from it. And the fact that you used to go in and train on your own. I remember you told me when I was on the team that you would train sometimes and the lifeguard would time you. Yes. You know, things like that. It's just so many people would sit in that cubicle and go, no. You're like, no, I'm doing it. And it's just, it's amazing the achievements that you've got and the journey you've had so far. I say so far because you are still involved in swimming, but yes. We aren't finished with your journey yet. So you, again, I'm going to go through the list because it's just amazing. And I'm going to take some of it and pretend it's mine. 3 times Olympian, multiple European medalist, 2 times Commonwealth champion, world medalist, world and European short course champion, and 22 times British champion. 22. That is absolutely insane. Now, I would love to talk about every single part of it, but I literally don't have a week, and there is that many achievements to go through. So I always love this question. You've probably answered it many a times, but your favourite memory moment from any of those, and it doesn't have to be any of those, it can be something completely separate, but I assume it's one of those. I don't know.
Yes and no. Could I possibly cheat slightly and say I actually do have 2 that are kind of on a par?
Okay, go on then. You can have 2.
So the first one, which you probably, I think you might know of it, would have to be 2014. Game. And again, it's more than just being on the podium. Which is why the second one for me is actually just as important for me and valued. 2013 going into 2014 was a really, really difficult year. Coming off London and going into 2013, it was a little bit rough, but it wasn't too bad. I kind of had a couple of niggles and a couple of injuries kind of impact me in some shape or form, but I felt, 2014, I've been told, they've changed up the program. 400 IM is always on the last day in a Commonwealth Games setup, and because it was in Scotland and Glasgow, they were like, you know what, we're going to put it on day 1. You won Golden Delhi, we want you to do it again, so we're going to move it from day 6 to day 1, and not only is it going to be in day 1, it's going to be the first event, and we expect you to win it again. Yay! And I'm like, right, I need to qualify for this and go through the mind process and try and deal with that sort of home crowd pressure. So having gone through London, I had a bit of exposure to that, so I kind of knew, okay, it's not going to be as extreme as the Olympics, but still, your Team Scotland, for us, this is like our Olympics. It's a big deal being part of Team Scotland, and it's awesome. But I started getting my butt kicked quite a lot by Amy Wilmot. She then started having a really great year from 2013 to 2014. She started progressing. She broke through. Just her strategy started working really, really well. And it was the first time in a while that I was now getting beat in the 400 IM on home soil. And I'll admit, I was a little bit like, this is not going to be an easy thing for me to do going into commies. And the funny thing is actually it was really, really good to have that competition, just that head-to-head to push. But at the same time, I was like, my ego felt like it was on the line. And I was like, right, how am I going to deal with this? So every time I raced her, she kept beating me and she kept getting quicker. I was training the best I'd ever trained, but my racing was just meh. It just felt, I wasn't reflecting what I was doing in training. And I was getting so frustrated. And my dad was actually really good. He kind of said, you know what? He's like, there's no point swimming fast now. We need you to swim fast in the summer. Just hang on. Just stay with it. He's like, keep the slingshot going. We kind of use the analogy of the slingshot. The more you spin it, the more momentum you build. So when you let go, the further it'll go. So he's like, don't let go of the slingshot now. Hang on. So did the trials, qualified. Again, that was really hard. Chose not to swim it because the Scottish trials and the British trials were actually back to back. So I swam the 400 at Scottish, but opted not to swim it at the British. So Amy won British champs in 2014, but I wasn't there. And she probably would have gone a heck of a lot quicker as well, maybe if I'd been there. I don't know. But it was interesting just watching and panicking and worrying, thinking, I've got all this pressure. They've changed the competition to have the 400 on day one. The expectation for me to just come away with this gold medal is going to, supposedly be really easy. And it was the first time, I think, mentally, I was just putting so much weight and pressure on my shoulders. I was 24, about to turn 25, so I was very aware that I was seen to be at the end of my career. Little did I know I hung on for a little bit longer.
Crazy.
And then coming into the games, Patrick wasn't selected as a coach as well. So again, the first time I panicked thinking, I don't have him there. I'm in this situation where I don't feel like I'm in control of what I'm doing. So it was like almost all these things seemed to be going against me. But again, my dad was like, doesn't matter from there. I remember we met actually on the wall of a petrol station outside the village. I'm not really supposed to have met up with him, but I was like, screw this. For my own mental well-being, I need to kind of just get a little bit of reassurance from him. And he just stayed so calm for the whole thing. And the last thing he said to me was, just race. He's like, you've done everything right. He's like, there's nothing else I could have asked of you. And he just said, just race. And when it came to the heats, I raced the heats. It was the first heat as well. So opening up the swimming side of it, I was like, oh, okay, this is a lot of pressure. But going into the final, I kind of realized I had to change up my race strategy and just think, you know what, let's just try it and just go with it. So I ended up going out, I think, a lot faster than what I'm renowned for going out for. And I think like my 100 fly PB is like a 101.9, and I went out in a 102.1 or something like that. Well, the start of a 400 AM, so it was suicidal. It was, it was
wow.
A bit stupid. But, I kind of thought, you know what, I need to try it. So when I finished and saw that I'd won it and been gotten a really good time as well, trying to sit on the lane rope, fell off it. That's now ingrained, I think, on YouTube for eternity.
Yeah.
But I stood on the podium, and it was not hearing the national anthem really hits home for me. But it was more than just having the medal around my neck. It was sticking with it. It was overcoming a lot of the pressure and the anxiety that I was putting on myself, what I expected others or felt I had pressure-wise from others, and actually still following through with it and realizing that I was capable of doing it, and actually coming out feeling like I achieved what I'd set out to do, which was just race. And those last words that my dad had for me, I think, was the cinching point. Had I not had that, I possibly would have worried of, I need to win. I need to get this. I felt I need it, not just for myself, but the expectation of everybody else. So it was being able to shut all of that off and just go back to that, little Hannah for 12 to 15-year-old, where I would just get back up and race again and again and again, because I just wanted to race. So I had to kind of channel that back. You talk about the transition from junior to senior, but for me, I had to transition my mindset from senior to junior in a sense of just race, just, cut out all the sort of little numbers and the stuff you can't control, and just bring back the pure enjoyment of just racing. So that was like a really big moment for me. And it was, it was great. I was able to, become the third, I think, Scottish female athlete ever to have successfully defended a title. So to be with Liz McColgan and Helen McKay was, I felt very, very honoured. So the second
and somewhere you should be, but just cutting in there, because I watched that race. I was stood on poolside. I watched that race, and you could feel the enormity of it in terms of, you saw you with your dad, you saw you touch the wall, you saw you go onto the lane rope and fall off, but you felt how special it was. It was a home games. It was amazing. And the flip side of that was, I remember being at those games and seeing MJ. I went up to the stands to see my parents, and I walked past him. I think he was with his dad, and he was just like a broken athlete, because again, he had been one of the people that, this is going to be it, and it's the home games. And so, to have seen the contrast of that as well, the fact that you were able to do what you did with everything that happened as well against you in a way, and the constant in the year before, whatever, the lead up to race and not feel great, and race and not feel great, even though it's because I'm training hard, and even though I'm having the best training of my life, it's still difficult, and it's the doubts that we all get in swimming. But then, so to have performed the way you did, and like I say, to feel that in the pool was really special for just us on poolside. So I can't imagine for you that and your dad, I mean, you said he stayed calm, and I'm sure he did around you. I'm sure away from you.
He told me afterwards he was anything calm.
But sorry, carry on. Your second one then.
Yeah, my second one was actually my 4th place finish in Rio. At that moment in time when I touched the wall and realised that I'd come 4th, it's definitely not up there as my best moment. But looking back at it, it definitely was one of my sort of highlights, because I've learned to appreciate it a lot more. For a long time, I always felt being on the podium and winning the medals is what defined you as a great athlete. And there's some athletes like, Adam Peaty, who is, untouchable in the breaststroke world. And Nkete Kahoso is the Iron Lady. And, winning is what sport's all about, about touching first, being on the podium. And it's great that we have that, but it's not the end all. And I think, as an athlete, we shouldn't define ourselves based on the materialistic end of it. Like if you described my career basically, and who I am as an individual, as a triple Olympian, and all the accolades, which is awesome. But how often do we describe ourselves? Like how do we describe ourselves? If you asked me to describe myself without saying what I'd won, I'd be like, I'm not sure.
I like to kick cats out when people ask.
I know. So for me, I kind of say I'm a full-time body movement enthusiast, part-time puppy trainer, because those are the two things that I'm so fascinated with, and that describes who I am as a person. But the 4th place finish from Rio has allowed me to come to terms with that. And finishing 4th, and not just 4th by 1500ths of a second, it's agonizing. You've built up this sort of whole journey of a fact of you do everything, and the one last little piece, it's like having a jigsaw, and then that middle piece is missing, and you think you've got it, and it's not for another jigsaw. But actually, that piece with the other jigsaw is just as valuable. And that's the life lesson that I kind of took away from that, is that, okay, I might not have that middle piece, but it's still a pretty good jigsaw. It's still a pretty good, picture at the end of it. And you can still see the picture at the end of it. You don't need that final piece to feel complete with it. And, I kind of felt, for me, 4th in the world, it's not bad.
I mean, it's all right. It's all right.
Yeah. And I had to keep reminding myself of that. And actually, I felt really, really proud of myself, because I could have gone in so many different directions after it. I could have just decided to stop straight after Rio. And there was a couple of things that I definitely didn't do well or didn't do right to look after myself, both physically and mentally. And I'm aware of that now. And I kind of feel grateful to have gone through that, to actually kind of make myself a little bit more robust and open that mindset again, kind of going back to that sort of growth mindset, because I think I ended up putting myself very much into this box of, this is what I expect, this is what it has to be, it can't look any different, it has to end up like this. And I felt I needed that medal to validate who I was as an individual. And you kind of said the amount of accolades, I kind of had to remind myself of, it's just another medal. It doesn't take away from what's already been. And yeah, being on the podium would have been amazing, and it definitely would have probably outranked maybe the sort of Commonwealth moment. But I put the fourth place one on a par with it because I still was able to walk away feeling like there was nothing more I could have done with that swim. You know, no matter how much I looked at the race, that for me was my perfect race. And it was only, I think, 0.4 or something like that, slower than what I did at the Commonwealth Games. You know, 0.4 is, there's not that much to it. So it's like, why are the two so different? And again, it's like, you know, all I was focused on was the time rather than looking at the whole picture. So I am proud with that fourth place. And I've kind of come to terms with realizing that actually it is a really good moment and I need to celebrate it more often. And, you know, when you go and speak to kids, you want the medals to show, but at the same time, they end up seeing the medals and not you as the individual. And for me to come forward and talk about my fourth place, you guys actually get to see me as the athlete, as the person, as Hannah, even without the medal. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, two amazing highlights to talk about. It's a real pleasure to hear them, because a lot of the time, a lot of athletes speak about the things they did that are amazing and it went perfectly and they won gold and it was great. And actually, no, the more real, the more people can connect with are the stories that you didn't quite get what you wanted to achieve, but this is what you got from it instead. And you might necessarily not have got that. And to look at things in that kind of way, that's why I love the mentoring that I do, because it's kind of like, okay, no, but this is what I learned and this is where I don't want you to make these mistakes, or this is where I want to support you. And so it's using those things that you learn from those times where it didn't, at the time, it's like, oh my gosh, what, this is the end of the world. But actually, no, there's a reason for this. And it's great. And it's good to see you still involved with swimming and stuff like that, because a lot of people finish and don't want to be involved with it at all. But just quickly, not quickly, but you just said you didn't look after yourself after Rio. And one of the things that I have written down as a topic, which it might not have been this, so I would like you to kind of maybe talk about that if that's okay, but also, what was your life balance like as a swimmer, as a professional swimmer? Because it's something you enjoy, but it's also your job and it also takes up a lot of time. So if you say to like a swimmer, what's your hobby? Sometimes you just want to go, I don't have time. Napping is my hobby. So it's a really interesting one. It's so important because it's like you need that, but how do you get that, and how did you find that?
Yeah, completely. So I didn't take a break after Rio, and that was probably one of the biggest mistakes that I've made. I decided to do the World Cups because I thought it would be fun. So after Rio, I kept swimming, and it was actually quite nice in a way because I was still hurting quite a lot from it, and I was trying to process and trying to deal with it. And one of the best things that actually did happen afterwards was sitting up until like 3 a.m. with Amy in the kitchen, and the two of us were just talking, just getting off our chest how we felt, listening to each other. And for me, I'll never ever forget that, and I really value that time. And I don't think Amy will ever realize actually how much I appreciated her listening and talking to me, because that was part of my way of healing, but I didn't continue that afterwards, and I should have, talked a lot about it, because being on day one as well, you have to box it to then move on to support the rest of the team for another 7 days. So I dealt with it by just getting in and just swimming and just dealing with it in my head and boxing it up, which made it very, very difficult for me to then open those emotions and look at it and deal with it then. So went and raced at the World Cups, and I came fourth, I think, like 8-9 times after that. So fourth place was just haunting me.
You're supposed to be there for a bit, Hannah. That's what it was.
Yeah, I think as well, I was like, okay, this is telling me, something is telling me you have to face this fourth place. And I was just doing everything I could to not face it. I also had officially moved from Geary to the University of Aberdeen performance team as well. And once I finished the World Cups, their season pretty much started, and my dad had gotten the job as the head performance coach. So I followed. And that was why I decided to leave Geary to basically just follow the coach. And so I just started the season straight off, and I moved home. I moved out of home, and I kind of had like an apartment that I was renting. And as you said, I just didn't have anything other than swimming. And there was a lady that I spoke to, 2 years ago during lockdown, and she kind of said something for me which was very, very powerful for me now. And actually, looking back at it, I kind of realized how poorly I was looking after myself. And she said, "There's 3 things that you should have in your life: a hobby that is financially good for you, something that brings you money in, or your job, but call it a hobby that is financially good, a hobby that keeps you fit, and a hobby that allows you to be creative." And I would pick swimming for all 3.
Yeah.
And I kind of realized that, this is not ideal. So, from 2020, 2021 until now, I've learned to separate those 3, and I feel a lot happier with how things are. But I kind of put myself, so going back to 2016, from 2016 September through to Christmas time, I threw myself back into swimming, and emotionally I was all over the place. I would just, the more frustrated or tired I got, the more I pushed. And I got to the point where I ended up actually damaging my ankle in December. And I reckon I could have avoided that had I given myself a break, been kinder to myself mentally, and not overcooked it. I felt I needed to do more because I didn't feel like I was good enough. And that was such a dangerous cycle for me to be in, and I wasn't aware to stop it. And also the dynamic that my dad and I had was different now. It wasn't just working with myself in an age group program, it was now a high performance program. So I was very aware that I was having to be, not that I wasn't independent before, but we couldn't have the sort of one-to-one chats at home because I'd moved out as well. So there were lots of different changes, some of which were good, but I had to figure a lot of stuff out myself too. And I just wasn't kind to myself. I wasn't giving myself the opportunity to have that break. I felt I shouldn't have a break. I couldn't stop because I'd been missing opportunities. And I didn't realize how much I was overcooking things a little bit. And it took this ankle injury to kind of get me to stop and realize, because that ankle injury stayed with me for about 2 years. And I got to 2018 when I had the surgery. And I remember having the conversation with my dad saying, "I'm done. I don't want to keep swimming anymore. I've had enough." And I was just in tears. I hated what I was doing. I really didn't enjoy the place I was in. And had the surgery done. And actually it was like, right, I've got 2 weeks where I don't have to swim. It's fine. It's all good. I lasted all of 24 hours when I realized I can't sit and do nothing. Yeah. So what I did was like, right, I can't run, I can't spin, I can't cycle, anything that loaded my foot, I was like, I can't do. So I thought, right, go on the ski erg. But I'd literally just go in and be like, right, no more than 30 minutes, do warm up, like mobility work, no more than 10 minutes of just high intensity work, and then stop. Hobbled onto poolside, and then I actually just dipped my upper body in the water. So I just lay on poolside, so my waist from my feet were dry and my upper body was in the water. And I just sculled. And I actually sculled and actually just enjoyed feeling the water and actually reminded myself, why do I swim and why do I want to keep doing with, just getting back in and just being near water. And I realized I just love being in the water. That simplicity of that body movement, I reminded myself of, not a big athlete. I love the quirky side of being able to float, finding different challenges and knowing where my body is in water. And I realized I had to take myself back to that junior stage mindset of just enjoying being in the water, ignoring times. So for 3 months, I wasn't allowed to have a stopwatch at all. So I couldn't push off the wall when I was allowed back in. And I literally just swam, and I got to sit and think a little bit like, how does that feel? Can I pull myself forward? Is that wide? Is that narrow? Just gave me a different mindset, a different focus. But the biggest bit for me was actually racing at the Catalan meet. And I think that was the first time I'd seen you for a wee bit actually racing there too. And I was terrified racing because I thought, I'm going to be so slow. I'm going to be so far off my time. I've not done all the VO2 max sets that I normally do. I've not done the mileage, this, that, and the other. And I thought, right, I'm going to go into this swim. It's two things that I've been working on. Trying to get my foot to move underwater and trying to finish, work on my finishes. So I swam my 400 IM. And as soon as I finished, I refused to look at the scoreboard. And all I said to myself was, well, did I do the underwaters? I was like, yeah, I did. I made 4 flag kicks, obviously not on breaststroke, but all the other turns, trying to work on that. Yeah, I ticked that off. Did I breathe in the last 10 meters? No, I don't think I did. So another tick. Excuse me, talking so much, I'm drying my throat out. And turned and looked at the scoreboard. And actually, for the first time, even though it was like 25 seconds on my PB, like it was really like quite a fair bit off, I felt happy because I felt, I still achieved something. And that for me was a little light bulb moment. And that was kind of the first step in starting to kind of heal myself mentally as well as physically. And that was when I realized how poorly I'd looked after myself off the back of the Olympics, because you don't realize the emotional pressure and weight that you carry at the end of a season and how important it is to have that break. But not only to have that break to sort of mentally and physically recover, but to allow yourself to enjoy other things out with swimming. And there's a couple of bits that I always enjoyed. I love movies, I love reading and little bits, but I had to find something that I was passionate about that's not just swimming. And that was where, during lockdown, I qualified as a Pilates teacher. I started teaching Poppy tricks, and I kind of realized that there are other things that I'm good at out with swimming. And that for me gave me that missing puzzle piece that I think I felt I missed after Rio. And that kind of started filling it. Sure, it didn't look the same as the others, but it filled it. I felt complete. So I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, no, you absolutely have. And I think there's so many things I could clip from this and just literally play it to my athletes, if I'm honest, or to any club or anything. Because, like I say, you have so much knowledge that you've taken from being in this sport for so long and being successful, but also overcoming so much. It's absolutely amazing. And one thing that I would like to say before we move on to more important things, Poppy, but one thing that I would like to say is we've mentioned multiple times, obviously, your achievements, and you said that's what people say when they talk about Hannah Miley. But there was the Smiley Miley that everybody talks about all the time, and it lit up every team that I was on, for sure. I can say that. And you always were the athlete that made everybody feel comfortable. And I think you kind of went out your way to do that at times as well, all the time, really. I remember my first team was European short course. It was in France, I think. And I will never forget, because that was my first senior team. And so I was kind of like, oh my gosh, there's Hannah Miley on the bus, sat there. And you were just so wonderful with not just me, but then I witnessed everybody that came on the team. Mm-hmm. I was just like, sometimes I would even just look around and you'd be there and I'd be like, it's all good, Hannah's there, it's fine. So you brought so much more than these achievements, which are amazing, but brought so much more to the table when it came to being on a team and just the atmosphere and being that Smiley Miley that we all know and love, and everybody just looks up to you. I mean, I always have. I might look down to you in person, but everything else I definitely look up and admire and just think, you've done amazing. And there is so much more we could talk about, but we have to get on to Poppy, because Poppy won.
Yes.
Poppy is Hannah's dog. Can you just tell us when you got Poppy, why you got Poppy, all these kinds of magical things?
So keeping with my values of, keeping it with the family and, the family dynamics, my mom's dog, Flo, had a litter of puppies in October 2019. And I was actually racing at the ISL for the first time. So mom was sending me all these pictures and I was like, oh, I just want to fly home and just cuddle with these they look like little ankle socks. And yeah, it was just so much fun. I've never gotten changed after training so quick. Like every single session, it was like, I just want to go and sit with the puppies. That for me, if you're looking for something to help you de-stress, puppy therapy is just amazing. Just sitting in, letting them nibble and chew on you. Yes, you get covered in lots of gunk, but you don't care. It is just amazing. And yeah, she's a working Cocker Spaniel. She's a black and tan Spaniel. And mad as a box of frogs, but so loyal, Velcro dog. Pretty much, I now can't go to the toilet on my own anymore. I have a shadow. So wherever I go, we have little sort of challenges to see how far away I can walk without Poppy noticing and seeing if I can get far enough to actually go and do something. And as soon as I make a noise, you get the little pitter-patter of feet, and she's like right there going, have I missed anything? Are you okay? I'm here for you. So yeah, so for me, I always
Hannah, you've always had an affinity with animals, though. Am I right? Yeah. You always have. I mean, I'm sure I remember asking you what your dream job would be when we were swimming, and I just thought you're a typical professional swimmer, and you were like, working with animals. I definitely did. This is great, but animals. And I was like, I'll never forget that. But please carry on.
Yeah, I still wanted to be a vet when I was younger, and I kind of feel I still love to work with animals in a sense of just more hands-on, maybe not necessarily operating, but just the aftercare and just looking after them, because their personality and behavior traits are just so fascinating. And I kind of feel that the pet finds you. And I remember sitting in the pen on the many occasions I was gay crashing at my mum and dad's, and Poppy would just come and plonk herself in the middle of my lap and just quite happily watch her little brothers and sister kind of running around, and she was quite happy sitting there. And every time I came in, she would always come and sit on my lap, and I thought, I've got to take her home with me. I was like, she's mine. That's it. So I kind of told Ewan, we're getting a dog.
You told Ewan?
Are we? I was like, yeah, she's coming next week.
I like it.
Oh, okay. So yes, we brought her home like a week before Christmas, and it was amazing. It was chaos, but it was amazing. And you kind of realize, like, there were so many things I wanted to do because I wanted to do it right by her. I had family dogs. We had golden retriever Molly and Flo, so kind of grown up with them. But I was like, puppies are a responsibility, so I kind of get to do things the way that I'd like to do them. And took her to puppy classes, and Ewan was great because she's his first dog too, so he's learned an awful lot. And the puppy trainer that we went with really helped us kind of shape our mindset so that we're on the same page, but also look at things differently, so that we don't treat her like a human. Although there's times where you kind of want to, but kind of seeing things from her perspective as well. And again, it goes back to that behavior. And yeah, we kind of not looked back since, and she's just slotted herself into kind of our dynamic very, very well. And they say dogs and their owners become very, very alike. And yeah,
here's another Hannah. We have another Smiley Miley, which is great.
Very much so. And just great. Because especially during lockdown, like Ewan had lost a lot of his work, so he signed up to work at Tesco's. I wasn't sure what was happening with training and swimming, and I was kind of doing a lot of online work trying to help swimmers get through, or athletes in general, to help get through lockdown and just offer help as much as I could. And I kind of realized I wasn't helping myself. So talking to Poppy, sitting with her and stroking with her, and she'd just listen. And that made such a big difference. And then doing the trick training as well, we kind of built our bond a lot more on doing that. And it was great because it meant as well, Ewan would come back and be like, guess what? I taught the dog to pack my swimming bag, or guess what? The dog roll in a blanket, or guess what? The dog can go fetch toilet roll, just little things. And it always made him smile. So it kind of felt nice that even though he was having a tough shift and a tough day working at Tesco's, he would always come back and we could make him smile, and just kind of get him to forget the day that he's had, or just get him to sit and chill and enjoy what Poppy did. She's brought so much joy to our family, and just being able to take her on so many different things, different walks, getting us out and about. I didn't realize actually how important it is to actually just go out and walk. You don't have to go out and exercise to run to, heart rate zones and stuff. Just going out and walking made a big difference to mine and Ewan's mental health. That one walk a day that we were allowed, and as Poppy was a puppy, we weren't allowed out for long with her, but we got to see so many different places within Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire that we weren't aware existed. And, we always thought, we have to go on holiday to go somewhere abroad, somewhere exotic, somewhere warm. When actually there was so much to do on our back doorstep. We actually took for granted what we actually had, and it made us realize and appreciate and actually fall in love with the area so much more. And she's just an amazing, funny wee thing that's brought a lot of light and joy to mine and Ewan's life. And hopefully I'd like to kind of share that with others as much as I can.
Well, you definitely do, because over lockdown, I would see videos of Poppy packing your bag, and I thought my brother could probably do with a Poppy, if I'm honest. He always forgot stuff. So, but you spread the joy with Poppy, and Poppy is amazing. In fact, Poppy is Scotland's best dog. She has the award. You have the award there. Please, it is better than any medal you've ever won. Look at that. Now, the visual to the listening people on Spotify and stuff, this is amazing. You have to go onto YouTube just to see this award. But it really does beat every single medal Hannah has ever won. But how was that process? Because again, that's, Poppy's brought some new element to your life, which dogs do, like you say.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of get a dog and then you realise, oh, wow, you have to do that, and then you see more of the country and you think, oh, wow, I live in quite a cool place. But Scotland's best dog, I mean, what more do you want?
I mean, yeah, and I can't wear like a pair of trousers or a jumper without finding a poo bag. You find poo bags just emigrate to every part of any clothing that you have, and bags and car and everything. But no, the program itself was hilarious. So it was my physio who actually sent me the advert for it. And initially I thought, oh, it's just, a showpiece on the companionship between, humans and their dogs. And I was kind of umming and ahhing whether to go with it, because I felt, well, you see some other dogs that, have donated blood and saved so many other animals' lives, or they've rescued their human from the mountains, or they've done this, that, and the other. And I thought, I just had Poppy in my backpack doing squats with her, or lunges, or weighted Russian twist with her. And I was like, I'm not quite sure if our story is it's exciting enough. But I thought, you know what? I won't know unless I try. Because it was like, well, what if we do get in? What are we going to do? And I was like, I don't know. And of course, it was just that total athlete mindset of just overthinking it. And I thought, oh, what? Screw it. Let's just do it. So I just signed up and I just explained everything about it. Probably over-talked or over-explained it. But I thought I'd rather put it in and not, and regret not putting it in. So I didn't hear anything back. So I thought, okay, well, obviously not been selected. But then I heard back and they said, oh, there's a process where obviously they're going to be eliminating. Like, oh, you're gonna have to do like an interview to basically explain who you are, what Poppy's like, and just explain your dynamic. And I was like, "Hi, I'm Hannah. Here's Poppy." Ta-da! It was really, really bizarre. But I tried to piece together like some of the stuff that we've done, and Ewan was really helpful and just kind of reminded me again of some of the stuff that we've done, like the tricks and the impact and the importance of those bits. We put that together. And that was when I realized it's actually a competition. It's not showcasing companionship. You're actually going to be competing against other dogs and owners, and you're going to be tested on your agility, your recall, and your bond. So I was like, oh, okay, this could be interesting. And they're like, so, what one do you think is going to be your best one? I was like, well, for a spaniel, her recall's pretty good. We know we play games to kind of keep her enticed and want to come back, and she chooses to come back, so that's always good. Agility, don't know, never done agility before. And bond, I was like, she's like a Velcro dog. So, and that was when I was kind of realizing I was kind of doubting myself quite a lot. So it was really good for me to actually try and put myself out with the swimming sort of side. And then I found out we got selected for the heats, and drove down to Perth, and we were there like all day to film. And we met up with 2 other dogs and their owners, and we weren't allowed to see what everyone else did, but we were given these different challenges that tested those things. And I was so nervous. I was like more nervous for that than I was probably for my Olympic final, which is so far away.
Crazy.
But I think it was just, I just did not know what I was doing, because I know exactly what I'm doing with swimming. Everything's like regimented, you know, your timeline, everything's like, you just know it. Whereas I was putting myself in a situation where I thought, I have no idea how this is going to go. If, you know, I didn't want to look like a tool. I didn't want Poppy to kind of feel stressed out. I didn't want to make a fool about ourselves. But actually, I kind of realized Poppy's tail was wagging at the start. And at the very end, she did not care whether I came first, second, third. She didn't understand like the placing. All she wanted was to just do the challenge with me and be like, was that good? Do you want to do it again? And that was when I realized by the end of it, I need to just chill out. I need to actually just relax and actually just enjoy it. Just be more Poppy, you know, be more dog. And
I was going to say, channel your inner Poppy here.
Yeah, very much so. That's what we did. And then the last, we got through to the semi-final finals, and the challenges were hilarious. I mean, he ended up inside like this 6-foot box. I've got quite severe claustrophobia as well, and I had to get sealed inside the box, and the challenge was Poppy had to free me. So I was like, Poppy, get me out of here. And because she was a small dog, she got herself almost in with me. And I was like, but it was brilliant. And like, I genuinely didn't think we'd get as far as we did, let alone coming away with the Golden Bone trophy. But it was so much fun. And I think you can watch it back on iPlayer. And it was just nice just to see other people and their dogs, their stories, their journey, their bond. And it just gave me an opportunity to just be proud of Poppy and just show what she can do. And in that sort of environment, I was so chuffed that she managed. She did not care about the cameras, that there were lots of people there. As long as I was there by her side, she was happy. And I kind of learned to, as you say, channel my inner Poppy and just enjoy it. And yeah, it was awesome to come away with quite a magnificent trophy and feel, right, well, I think all of my stuff's now going to have to get shifted, and I'm going to have to make a little trophy cabinet for Poppy.
Absolutely. There's no question, Hannah. That's it now.
No.
Yes, you're amazing, but now Poppy is obviously taking first place here with this one. Just great to see your posts and just see you doing something different and just getting yourself out there and kind of forcing you to do something different, because we get so stuck in what we know, and you know, it's like, I know this and I'm safe and I'm comfortable and blah blah blah, and then to see you go on and do that, I was like, yeah, I like this. Cool. So obviously recently you have retired, and it's a tough process for every athlete. No matter how you end up leaving the sport, it's tough. It's something you dedicated a lot of time to. In your case, a lot of time to. And so how are you finding retirement? And it's only recent, so you know, like as you've said a few times, things take a long time and you don't actually realize how long. But so far, how are we doing?
So far, it seems to be going all right, actually. I'm enjoying having the time to actually prioritize a couple of other things that I would have maybe put below swimming, and spending a lot more time with my family and friends, and not have the pressure being like, right, I've got time for you, but it's time limited. It's like, I've got time for you. Let's just see how the day goes, you know. And it's and that's where the sort of between Christmas and New Year was really quite important. I really, really enjoyed just having that relaxation, not feeling right, I've got training in an hour. What do I need to eat? When do I need to eat? And like, I still have a little bit of regimen of making sure that, you know, what I eat is still all right. But the edge of that sort of intensity and the purpose and the sort of regiment side of it is taken off. And yeah, I'm enjoying it. It definitely felt like it was the right time for me, and I kind of feel happy. It doesn't initially, before I pressed the publish bit announcing it, the night before, I was in bits. Like, I was trying to write it, and I rewrote it like 3 or 4 times, to the point where I literally had like a massive mental breakdown. And poor Ewan had to kind of sit and remind me of being like, it's not the end of the world. You know, he's like, you can announce your retirement tomorrow and then come back 2 days later. It's all good. And then he was like, please don't do that.
But please don't.
Yeah. But it kind of reminded me of being like, I was making out in my head it was going to be this big thing. But actually, once I did announce it, I realized that there was a weight lifted off my shoulders and I can get in and swim and actually just enjoy just swimming for fitness, just enjoy swimming because, you know, I love being in the water and not feeling right, why do I have to swim? What's the goal here? What's the process, the outcome? It's nice just swimming without having to sort of specify why I have to be in the water. I can just be in the water because I can and because I want to. So I definitely feel a lot happier with it. I guess finding my feet with what my career is has been a little bit more sort of interesting because, you know, people, if they ask, oh, what do you do for a career? Yeah, I could always say, oh, I'm a swimmer. Whereas now it's like, I'm a swammer.
I have for Scotland's best dog. That's
yes.
Don't need to say any more on that, Hannah.
So to try to find, I guess, because I felt I needed to categorize it or have a name for what my career will be, and at the minute I don't know. I've got a couple of little bits. Like I still love the health and fitness side, like my Pilates stuff I really enjoy, and doing the one-to-one consulting. Whether I go into coaching or not, I don't know, but I enjoy still offering that help. Probably consulting in some shape or form. But at the minute, there's a couple of other projects in the background that I'm really passionate about and that I'm working towards. But what that looks like and having a descriptive name for it, I don't know. But it's been interesting trying to find my feet. I have a couple of days where things are great. It's all really good. And then I do have moments where you panic and there's a little bit of, oh, where am I supposed to be going? What am I doing? But it's all part and parcel with it. And I've got a good team and I've got my family around me that I can talk and explain it to, and they seem to understand. It is. It's just that changing identity, but it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to be a wreck and being like, I don't know what to do, but I've been busy. So it's been good. I've been kept myself quite busy, but I've allowed myself to enjoy some relaxation time and time to just chill out. And I think the important thing was to not jump straight into something for me. For some people that works jumping straight into another career line or kind of path. But I've kind of needed a bit of time to just mentally come to terms with things and actually figure out where do I fit in, what do I enjoy doing, and you know, what do I honestly deep down want to try and pursue without feeling forced or pressured into doing it, and just have a bit of a breather because everything's been, you know, back to back, season by season, life on a spreadsheet and knowing and planning, and it's actually kind of nice doing the opposite at the minute and just kind of, as I say, taking a month or two to just breathe and kind of reflect on a couple of bits. And you should see the amount of stuff we've still yet to unpack in the house.
Well, you know what, you have time to do it, so it's great.
It's great.
It's really important. And you know, a load of things that you've said today in this podcast, there are things that everybody can take away and can relate to. So even though, you know, there's so much success with like Commonwealth Games and stuff like that as well, these things can be transferable to other things in life and can be learned. And that's the beauty of sport, I think, and you know, your story. And I hope you never, I mean, it's going to obviously continue, but I hope you never stop telling it, because it's just, it's an amazing one. Just before we wrap up, I wanted to give a special shout out to Ewan, because I remember when I first met him and I thought, yes, these two are just perfect. And you can see that he has been such a rock in your career and just everything, you know, you do together. It's brilliant. So just before we came on live to record this podcast, he was dancing at the window with Poppy, so I have to give him a shout out for that. It's just got to happen. But it's just nice that you're having that time with him at home, unpacking boxes, not wondering when's trials, when's the major, when do I have to race, just chilling out, and also still being within the world of sport. Thank you for sharing your story with me today. Thank you for coming on.
No worries. Thanks for having me.